If you haven't heard of Anchor by Spotify, you got to check it out. I've been using it for my podcast and it's been great. I can edit, I can record, I can distribute it to every platform I need, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It's everything that you need to record your podcast in one place. You can use it on your phone app or you can use it on your computer. So you really need to go check it out. You can download it at your app store or you can download it at anchor.fm. Happy recording. Hello and welcome to EQaboveIQ-Parenting with Emotional Intelligence and Healing the Inner Child. And welcome to this episode. I wish I could say that I was full of joy and enthusiasm, but I make this episode on June 24th. I know it's coming out later, but with a heavy heart. Roe versus Wade was reversed in an unprecedented move by the Supreme Court. Shocked, I am not. The whole purpose and the planning of this was executed, and it was a long term game that they played, and they being the religious right conservatives. This is a blow, even though I saw it coming around the bend. And I'm not going to say, I told you so, but I told you so. And that goes out to many of my friends and family. And I don't say that in an arrogant way. I say that with the deepest concern and sadly a bit of fear for their safety and future of their children, especially their daughters. The United States is on a path that is basically taking steps back hundreds of years because those in power are losing their power. They're losing their ability to manipulate, to keep us asleep, to uneducate us, to do all the things necessary to keep this small percentage of people in power. People are waking up. And so I'm going to be talking about how we are going to handle these transitions with our children. I don't have a daughter, but I do have a son. And I have a son that I am trying. No, I'm succeeding because I get a lot of feedback from people all the time about how my son is so kind and so helpful. So even though sometimes I have to argue to take the garbage out, I see him going out in the world doing the right things and understanding a lot of resistance has to do with neural pathways and external programming that I can no longer control because he is at the age of the preteens where I can no longer influence every part of his life. You know, though I try to be an example of what is right and what is good and what is purpose driven, I have to fight the tube, and I already say it every time. I don't like the tube. The tube is not made for children. And even though they try to make a kids version, all that stuff, there are people sneaking in even that avenue, trying to groom and indoctrinate them into these horrible and manipulative and narcissistic types of mentality towards the world, towards women. So I'm going to talk about how, and I've written about this in my blog, how to educate boys on how to be good allies to girls and women in this world. And one of the things that I have dealt with in my own marriage and situation is a lot of stereotypical misogyny around what boys do and what girls do and what boys should be allowed to feel and what girls are predisposed to do. And I'm telling you right now, it's all a bunch of malarkey. If you go back in time, the early 1600s, just like every animal on the planet, the men were wearing wigs and makeup. They were wearing frilly lace. They were trying to impress the females and say, I'm the catch that you want, of course, for physical favor. But that is natural. That is the natural order of things. What happened is that women were then manipulated into thinking that they didn't have that power to choose. And that is what Roe versus Wade reversal is blatantly telling us again, that these particular unattractive and unappealing men have to do something, because we were choosing. We were starting to choose. We don't need your money. We don't need you. We're not dependent on you. Some are still, because that's right. You have children with someone. You're supposed to be taking care of them. But there is a huge movement of women, and I might count myself among them, that find being in relationship with a male counterpart unsatisfying. And I'm not just talking about in the physical way. I'm talking about the emotional way. I'm talking about the heart-centered way. And it's because the men that are available in my age group, in particular, grew up in the patriarchy, that tail end. I know the next generation's a little bit more open, a little bit more sensitive, but I still see the messaging of the 1% who control the media airways and everything else, that men are weak if they show emotion. And so as a parent of a son, I'm always trying to counteract that with him and the environment, because, they are also teaching this in school. I had to take my son out of a class this year. There was a super macho, typical, football loving, I'm not putting down the men who are listening here who like football. Please don't misunderstand. The point is, those are symbols of hypermasculinity that I don't think are necessary. You like to play a sport, play a sport. You don't have to scream, yell, and use anger and bullying to be a winner. But think about it. The whole structure of our world is around this premise, dog eat dog world. But I think most of those analogies and most of that philosophy is deliberate. It is a way to punish women for just being women, to being the vessel of life, to being as strong as we are and how able to endure as much as we do. And being this mother of a son, I see him fall apart far more easily than I ever did. I saw his father fall apart just way more than I ever did. Or maybe I wasn't allowed to. Or there's such a different mentality towards women who show emotion nowadays, especially as something negative. Oh, you're just being emotional. One of the reasons why I really got into emotional intelligence and starting to understand how we can apply it to this global shift is I understood that the word emotion has been made into a negative. No matter what the emotion is, you hear somebody who's emotional. I could be talking about joy. I could be talking about sadness. I could be talking about anger. I could be talking about fear. But no matter what, if you just use the word emotional, there's a negative connotation attached to that. And that's on purpose. Emotions are data. It's data to bring awareness to what our state of being in the moment and what's around us that's triggering that emotion. And how we regulate or analyze that trigger is going to cause a reaction. Okay? Is going to give us further data on how to respond to the threat, to the joy, to the whatever. Emotions are data. Can we reframe that in our minds a bit? Because what we've done and what the mask of the patriarchy has done is just made emotions something negative when they're clearly just signposts of a need to change, a need to shift. There's something in the environment that's not right. Okay? So allowing our sons to have an emotional response outside of anger actually gives them tools, actually gives them data on how to be a better human being. See, so right now we have very stunted, emotionally stunted men walking around in this world, and their only outlet has been anger. It's the only one that they have been allowed to. So what do? They build that up 10 times higher than it has to be because all of the other emotions are suppressed because they're not allowed to express them. And I see women also all the time reinforcing this with their sons. Well, you got to let them learn how to be a man, or boys will be boys, and all these type of expressions that have been used by the media in every form, whether it's movies, television, newspaper, psychology. Yes, I said psychology. There has always been a concerted effort in the field of science to oppress. Some of you will balk at that statement, but think about it. Everything created in the current reality is about to control how you process information and think. And if you think differently from the status quo, you were already immediately put into a box of crazy. You're crazy. You're going against the grain. You're going against the norm. You're going against the powers when you think critically or differently. So this last, I've been on this planet almost 50 years. And I remember being 5 years old going, there's something wrong with this. This is not right. And I bet you if you speak to the majority of your children right now, who you may or not be sheltering from this reality, and ask them how they feel about this, how they feel about the current state of affairs, whether they have information or not, ask them how they feel in their bodies sometimes. Me and my son have this conversation once a week. I say, how you feeling in your body? To the point where sometimes he goes, oh, come on, Mom. No, I want to know what's going on in your body. Where are you tense? Where are you feeling anxiety? Because my son, unfortunately, due to the circumstances of our lives and circumstances of the relationship that I had previously was in, has grown in anxiety. And because he is a child of color, of a Black mother, there's also some anxiety inherited. I take full responsibility of that because of the life I've had to live with the amount of hypervigilance that I've had to have in order to protect myself. And that's not just exclusive to Black women, but it is all women. You see, one of the things that the patriarchy has created is a fear for women because throughout time, women have been assaulted, raped, molested, incestuous relationships by people that we were supposed to trust. And all of that has actually changed our DNA. Trauma changes your DNA. There's many studies out there. And I know that sometimes when I'm on here and I'm bringing up these facts and stuff, I don't give as many clinical examples, but I am a strong believer that if you want to be informed, you need to inform yourself. The current education system does not inform you to the extent of the knowledge that you need to know, because it also pushes against the controls in place. Because if you go and educate yourself and challenge and question too much, you're crazy. You actually rock the boat. You know, I talked to my son about these feelings in his body because I'm trying to teach him self-awareness and understanding what his triggers are. Because we live in this triggering reality. So we all have triggers. And young men in particular have this trigger around masculinity that they're constantly taught because their bodies are hardwired to protect, but they don't know how to do that anymore unless it's a war created by others to make millions of dollars off of those poor men's lives. But to do it, they have to actually break the minds and the spirits of these young men. You can't go into the military and be a feeling and sensitive young man. You will not come back out the same way. Just like the prison system, once you go into those cruel environments, you don't come back out the same. And this is a sort of genocide that they don't even understand that they're contributing to. A lot of these male rights, quote unquote rights, because you've never not had rights, leaders are freaking out because all of a sudden the playing field has equalized. So these type of people are cheering about Roe versus Wade. They're like, yeah, finally, because God and this and that. There are a million reasons excuses why this has been made up, why religion has made these hierarchies. But the truth is, you can go all the way back down in history, and the real history that hasn't been rewritten. Because if you got the real history from places like the cradle of the earth, which is Iran, Iraq, which they have purposely blown up, you will see scrolls, information that talk about the truth of humanity, where we came from, why we exist. All that stuff contradicts what the parties in control want you to know, because once you know the truth, which has been steadily coming out, and why critical race theory is the evil of the religious right, Christian right, why all this, they don't want to feel bad. They don't want you to wake up, and they don't want to feel pain, but pain and suffering is a part of the transition of growth. It's a growth mindset. In the last episode, I talked about growth and fixed mindset. Right now, the whole reality that we live in with our children is a fixed mindset. And I'm so excited. There are a lot of educators and psychologists talking about growth mindset, but that's really driven towards white people. I'm just going to say that. If you can't get to those resources because you are a young inner city, Black, poor person of color, you're not going to get that because you're not meant to have the growth. You're not meant to have the secret sauce of visualization and manifestation and all that stuff. You're not meant to have a forced voice on a platform that is educating people. That's not the role that they've delegated or selected for you. So I hear a lot of people on social media, which I'm not a fan, I've never been, complain about how they're shadow banned, how they're the content, and these are primarily Black creators of content. Their voices are always suppressed. The algorithm always bans their information. I have been a victim of this on Facebook for, I can't tell you how long. And I really don't say much that's controversial. I mean, if you consider this controversial, I'm sorry, but I'm just really in a place of understanding the collective at this moment. I have gone through enough, and I am so grateful because there are people listening, and thank you. You know, I see my numbers go up every week and I'm so excited. So if you're listening to this and you like the content, no, let's put that down. If you love the content I'm putting out, please, 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 please go to thisreallifebooks.com and support this podcast. You can go to the podcast tab, click support, and it'll take you to a page where you can decide how much you want to support, because it takes money to create these podcasts, because I am not a good editor. That's out of my wheelhouse. I don't, and I'm not going to even pretend I want to do it. I'm really, my heart's of hearts, I am a writer. I like to research. I like to read, and I like to speak on things like this that matter, that try to make a difference in your life and the life of our children. And I know the next generations will benefit from emotional intelligence. It's like, to me, it's the secret sauce. It's something that has been suppressed for so long because we didn't always live in a capitalistic paradigm. We were egalitarian, we were compassionate, we were traders, we were barterers, but we didn't live in this instant, I gotta have it now mentality. We knew things took time to grow. You had to feed them. I've been doing this bread making thing lately because, I don't know, I just like all of a sudden got obsessed with bread baking. There's something satisfying to see a loaf come out and pretty and smell good. And you can follow me on my Instagram if you want to see the few loaves that I've made. But also it's sustenance. It's satisfying. So I've been trying to get out of the packaged yeast, and I want to get into the sourdough, the natural yeast. And so I've been growing my own sourdough starter, and it's fascinating to watch how it works, to see the bubbling, to see the living things expand and grow, and see the jar fill up with bubbles, and knowing that I need to feed it daily in order for it to survive, just like a child. And sometimes I have to feed it 2 or 3 times, but at the end, I get this big, beautiful loaf of bread. And, you know, it tastes delicious. You smother it with butter or whatever you want to eat it with. So my son loves it. Makes sandwiches almost every day now because he just loves the bread. And to create something natural, to create something satisfied, we have to feed it. So we have to feed our children with the right, but we can't feed it just with anything. We have to feed it with the healthy things. We have to feed it consistently for it to grow. And that's how we have to treat our children. And that's how we have to treat each other. And that's how we have to treat the world. Right now, we live in a reality where we've been fed a bunch of lies, a bunch of unhealthy things, where we live on just 1% of the possibility of this planet because that's easier to control, right? And then the people who control the rest of that 99% of land, resources, and everything are just making money over fists. They've colonized the planet where there are resources, and we've just kind of been accepting it because we have been fed lies about what our purpose is, who we are, who we can be. And especially as a person of color, as a Black person, to know my history has been told in such a warped way that I was always a slave or I was a savage, and we know now, and with a concerted effort, that Black people have contributed to everything on this planet, in every country. You know, Anita Hill went on the record and fought the Supreme Court and the government to say Clarence Thomas, because we have bad ones too, every group does, is not a good man. He fed into the patriarchal system just like everybody else does. And so it's no surprise that he, and like these other men's rights leaders, are creating more toxicity with their belief systems, because he still keeps his seat. And he's been, oof, I don't have words. That's all I got to say. And, if you are a man listening to this and you are triggered in any way by anything that I'm saying, I want you to ask yourself the question: how does this feeling benefit me or anyone else? This anger, this resentment. If you do not learn how to release the resentment, aka insecurity you feel because you need to blame somebody for your feelings, you are a part of the problem. We're all accountable for what's happening right now. Women are accountable for continue to let it perpetuate to this point with our sons. Men are accountable for making us afraid to speak up, because the retribution is sometimes bloody, and women every day lose their lives for just existing, for walking down the street. You have put the onus on women to control how you feel in your body. When you see a woman, is she attractive? Does that stimulate you? It's not her fault. She may be beautiful. And it's definitely her fault when she says, no, thank you. Because the truth is, women don't owe you anything. We never did. And if you think just a little bit harder, and if you try to be a little bit more emotionally intelligent, you will create the type of person we do want to be with. But right now, it's all false vibrato, because we sense the insecurity. We sense that you don't actually like yourself, and that you are using us to validate who you are. You're using our bodies to validate who you are. I'm not talking about natural drive and procreation and all that stuff. People can throw that in. But we also have a prefrontal cortex that helps us to reason, that helps us as human beings make better decisions. And maybe because of all the trauma has gone on, it's offline. I have been talking about a lot. This is a little bit longer episode because I got a lot to say, because Roe versus Wade was like visceral for me. But there is a condition called Brenner's syndrome. And I'm talking about this because this came up in some research that I did for a paper that I was writing for my class. And I was like, why are we talking about this? I mean, I had found research about what they call it, the psychogene, some time ago. And there was a neuroscientist who did a whole TED Talk about it. And as I was doing this research, I realized there was a connection between Brenner syndrome too. Now, Brenner syndrome is basically a mutation in a protein in the body. I'm going to give you a little big background, because somebody told me, could you give me a little clinical stuff sometimes, because I'm interested where you got your research. So basically, you can also, like I said, you can take the onus is on you. You can look this up, but there's a gene called the MAOA gene, and this is a mutation of it. And if you have this mutation, you also have something called the psychopath gene. That means that you go out and you murder, and there's a lot of bad things that happen with this. But the Brenner's syndrome in particular is characterized by lower average IQ, about 85, problematic impulsive behavior, pyromania, hypersexuality, and violence, and sleep disorders and mood swings. It is in about 40% of the population. Now, where did this come from? Well, if you do a little research regarding inbreeding during feudal European times between the European families, you will see there was a lot of birth defects due to inbreeding, marrying your first cousin, marrying your second cousin. If you go up to the Appalachian Mountains, you see those people up there. These are the effects of inbreeding. And as you can see, people are getting closer and closer and closer to their family members when they're procreating. And every time that causes birth defects. Birth defects that manifest not just physically, but psychologically and emotionally. And I will stand firm with my research that this has a lot to do with what's going on in the world. Now, like I said, go on and do your research. You can find it just as much as I can. And they say it's rare, but I think it's less rare than you think, because just like when people report certain activities, they can report them or not report them. And I think there's so much shame linked to being different, it keeps secrets. How many families did you hear about? Ooh, that uncle so-and-so, that's actually his kid, or his daughter is blah, 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 blah. You know what I mean? This is something that has been happening for so long that is definitely associated with shame. So my wish for you and my hope is that you will start educating your children, especially your sons, on emotional intelligence, allowing them to have a full spectrum of expression of these emotions. Stop shaming your child for being afraid. Stop shaming your son in particular for crying. Crying is a release of toxin. Can you imagine all of these boys, all of these men told their whole lives, crying, you can't cry, don't cry. If you cry, you're weak. You imagine the amount of toxins? I honestly believe that most of these issues and most of these problems that we're having with gender rights and equality is due to the fact we have some toxicity in those people's bodies. They cannot express their emotions. Therefore, they're like these petri dishes of genetic mutations, of toxicity. Like I use that word all the time because it's toxic masculinity. That's the problem. So, men, mothers of young boys, do us all a favor, do humanity a favor, and talk to your boys when they're young and allow them to express their emotions. Let them feel, because the future is depending on you. We can't continue on this current course because we are in a place of implosion. We're in a place where feudal Europe is, or was. I'm looking at Brexit. I'm looking at all of these really bad decisions because they lack emotional intelligence, because the money is the goal. They don't care about the planet. They don't care about the animals who are on the planet. And honestly, they just don't care about themselves. As soon as you start to feel compassion for yourself, for your struggles, for your pain, you start to feel it for other people. Right now, we are in a time of a much needed introspection. So when you get in these social media feeds and these social media, streets, when you're about to respond to something that is extremely triggering, and I use social media because I actually don't like it, but I use it because it's our latest vehicle for communication. We relied on it way too much, and we see how it's spiraled out of control. But we can change it around because there is a positive part of social media that it can keep us closer together no matter where you are in the world. So this is what I want you to do. Before you comment on a post that you find that makes you angry, that makes you upset, I want you to go, why am I so triggered? What has happened in my life and my situation that makes me hate this complete stranger on the other end right now? Also, what makes me think I have a right? And would I, if this person standing in front of me, say the same mean, vindictive, nasty, and quite horrible words if they were in front of me right now? Would I have the courage? Would I have the wherewithal? Or would I feel a different energy? Okay. Anyways, this was a little bit longer one than normal. I have so much on my chest. This is just, this episode could be 2 hours long, but it's not. I wanted to put out an emergency episode as soon as this happened on the 24th with Roe versus Wade, but I had to process it. I had to find the words, I had to find the thoughts, I had to find the feelings inside of myself to best express it without being full of anger, full of disappointment. Because I truly understand why this has happened. And if you don't understand why this has happened, you haven't been paying attention. And it's sincerely time, like I said in the last episode, to have your grand awakening. It is time. So please go to thisreallifebooks.com. Check out my books on the emotional intelligence, teaching emotional intelligence to our children, because they are the generation that's going to make the shift for us all. And I honestly want the next 10 generations to survive on this planet. Don't you? Doesn't that give you a sense of peace to know that your kid is going to be okay no matter where you are or when you're not here anymore? Because we're not all going to be here anymore. Eventually, we all die physically. And I hope we can teach our children the tools in order to really thrive in this world rather than survive. Because right now, we are all in darn survival mode. And I'm exhausted. I'm tired of it. So go to thisreallifebooks.com. I'm just spiraling out of control here. Go to thisreallifebooks.com, purchase some books, sign up for some coaching if you need some help to get perspective on what's going on without losing it. You know, people are starting to lose it. And I'm going to even tell you that's a part of the natural process. But we can lose it in a up way rather than a down way. Okay? We don't have to push each other down. We can uplift each other while we lose it. Okay? And there might be some positivity in that losing it energy right now, because we need to shift things. We need to do it now, because if we don't, nothing will change and we'll repeat the cycles. Also, I got some gentle reminders clothing. This clothing was created with this purpose in mind. Sometimes we just need a visual reminder that we're in this together, that our children matter, that my respect towards you is going to get respect back, and all this kind of stuff. That's what Gentle Reminders is about. So I do hope that this episode gave you some peace, or actually gave you some drive, some incentive to research the things that I just mentioned in this episode, because it all makes sense. It all makes sense. And I hope you have a blessed day.